Hi, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri Appellate attorney and a guy who likes to make the law make sense on YouTube. For the last week, I watched segments of this trial, and I kept thinking, where do I know this woman from? I couldn't figure it out, and then I realized why. Toto was missing. Never before have we had a defendant in a criminal case who looked more like Judy Garland playing Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. But instead of being a beloved character, this woman was really more like the Wicked Witch of the North.
Ms. Vander Ark, I think we're just finishing up. I was just talking about the ice bath with you, and again, your text was, let him know that if he tries to sleep at all, he'll get another ice bath sometime before you leave for work, and another when I get home. So let's break apart that sentence for just a moment if we can, and that was on March 27th. Right, so yeah, about 9 days or so before Timothy passes away. Let him know that if he tries to sleep at all, let's start there. This is at 3 o'clock in the morning. You're saying he is not allowed to go to sleep, right?
Yes, sir.
So 3 o'clock in the morning, your 15-year-old child is not allowed to be sleeping, and if he does, he gets an ice bath, right?
Yes, sir.
And he'll get another ice bath, i.e. there's already been an ice bath prior to this text being sent, correct?
No, sir. It would be one and then another, is what it says.
Okay.
Early on in my career, I had two rules, and those two rules were based in large part on my experiences in healthcare. I would not defend drunk drivers unless I was appointed by a court, and I would not defend child abusers unless I was appointed by a court. Where did those two things come from? Well, it was a July 4th weekend, and all around the city of Quincy, Illinois, there's farmland. Now, farmers used to say they wanted their corn to be knee-high by the 4th of July, and I never saw a summer there where the corn was that short. It was always shoulder-high if it was anything. The rich soil around the Mississippi River grows corn and soybeans with complete ease. The patient I would come to know as the scholar was a National Merit Scholarship winner and was headed to Princeton in the fall. He was working for the Army Corps of Engineers doing scientific work on the river at one of the locks. There are several locks and dams on the Mississippi River. He had worked a full day, and he stayed late to collect samples, and he left for his house at about 8:30 that evening, just as the sun was setting. By the time he neared Quincy, it was dark, and in the country, where there's not a lot of lights around, it can be as dark as a black cat eating licorice in a coal bin at midnight. Because it was so dark, he had his high beams on. He wanted to see what was coming. The other two patients that I would acquire that night had been at a party. One was 17, the boy, and one was 16, the girl. Both had consumed alcohol, but the boy, who was driving, had consumed more than his fair share of it. They were headed out to a lookout over the river to do some practical work on anatomy and physiology, as well possibly as some work in reproductive health. With the corn thick and tall and planted near the edge of the two-lane road, neither driver saw the headlights of the other until they rounded the curve. The alcohol fuel car came across the wrong side of the road and smashed into the scholar. A passerby a few minutes later called the sheriff, and it took them almost 30 minutes once the firemen got there to extract the kids from the two vehicles. All three patients came to the ER where I was working, and all three were in critical condition on arrival. Now, I had been off that night, but I was called back in because the night shift couldn't handle 3 critical patients, 3 trauma codes all at once. So I took the 16-year-old girl and I ventilated her with a bag mask device. And every time I squeezed the bag to breathe air into her lungs, blood shot out of a crack in the top of her head. We moved her to surgery and they attempted to save her life. She died later that day in the recovery room. Her boyfriend lasted a short time longer, 3 or 4 hours after surgery, but he too succumbed to his injuries. That left the scholar. Now, he was in grave condition, but he was a fighter, and he had a very strong family, and they came in every time the nurses would allow visitation, and they encouraged him. And he lived, sort of. He had such profound neurological injuries that he was likely never able to go to school. He woke up, but he had difficulty walking. There were all kinds of problems. That case stuck with me. He had a wonderful family, and they helped pull him through, and none of them deserved the heartache that alcohol brought them. A few months later, on a busy Monday, I was paged to the emergency room for an inbound head trauma patient. Now, I had immediate flashbacks to the patient I just described, but instead, an 18-month-old infant lay limp on the stretcher, and the paramedics stood around that child with tears in their eyes. I took over the ventilation of the child because he wasn't breathing on his own, and we got him up to the intensive care unit and onto a ventilator. When Mom came into the room, she saw her baby. She screamed and passed out on the floor. She had entrusted the care of her baby to her new boyfriend so she could go to work because the boyfriend didn't work. She got the worst call a mom can get on that day, and it was too much for her seeing her child with multiple IV lines and a surgically implanted shunt in his brain. The police were there, and the doctor put up an X-ray on the viewer. And on the skull, you could see a pattern of broken skull bones that looked like somebody hit safety glass with a hammer. Now, the boyfriend would later tell police that he couldn't get the baby to stop crying, so he just squeezed the baby's head until he heard a pop, and then the crying stopped. On the second ICU day, the young infant passed away, and we had to medicate the mother to get her to let go of the child so that he could be taken to the morgue. The boyfriend would later be prosecuted and zealously defended. He got 7 years in prison for manslaughter in a plea agreement. So that's the reason I won't voluntarily do those types of cases. Understand, I would do them if a court ordered me to do them because everybody's entitled to a defense, and I'd do the best job I could. But it would not be my pleasure to do it, and I would not voluntarily do it. Now back to the Vander Ark case. Shonda was a graduate of law school. She was second in her class in law school, magna cum laude. She was very smart. She insisted on testifying. In her cross-examination, she developed the worst case of amnesia ever seen. Confronted with her text messages that directing the old boy's older brother to pour hot sauce on bread and feed the starving boy, she didn't question the messages existed or what they said. She just claimed she didn't remember that incident. Let's watch.
He's trying to get me in trouble here,
This
Mom.
is all Paul, right?
Yeah, this is Paul.
Okay.
And I told him to go to his room when I did. I brought him downstairs with me so his sneaky butt escaped. I watched him go into his room.
And what's your response there?
I said he said he never asked, but I've mentioned before you need to take him downstairs when you go to the bathroom so he can't escape.
All right,
Yes.
Let me just,
Okay.
I think we can stop there. You don't remember sending these text messages?
No, sir.
No memory from this time period?
No, sir.
Because of all the blackouts, all the tunnel vision, all the PTSD, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. He said he never asked, but I've mentioned before you need to take him downstairs when you go to the bathroom so he can't escape. That was what you said, though, right?
Yes, sir.
You actually used the phrase escape in relation to your 15-year-old child,
Apparently, yes, sir.
as if he was some prisoner.
No, sir.
Well, who else needs to escape but a prisoner? I'll withdraw that. May 9th, right?
Yeah, that's what it said.
You don't remember that at all.
No, sir.
When was Mother's Day 2022?
I don't remember, honestly.
If I told you it was May 8th, would you have reason to doubt that?
No, sir. Not at all. I believe you.
She put her son in ice baths. She refused to feed him. He was no more than skin and bones. When confronted with a photo of her boy taken shortly before his death, which was apparently fairly gruesome, and showed the boy very, very emaciated, she vomited. And I think that may have been stage managed. I don't know. But she did get sick when she saw that. Now, she had seen that every day when he was alive, and it didn't make her vomit. So that's why I think it was stage managed. Her answers were clearly deceptive, and I think that she thought she was smart enough to convince people that her son died from a self-imposed hunger strike, when he did not. She repeatedly testified that she was trying to stop him from being deceptive and stop him from lying about things. The boy was a special needs child. I doubt very seriously if either of those two explanations really make the case here for why this young lady shouldn't be in jail for the rest of her life. Her lawyer tried to get a manslaughter verdict, and he didn't do that. They charged her with murder and first-degree child abuse, and she was convicted of both. Now, one of two things is the case here. Either this woman is incredibly evil, or she is mentally deranged. I'm not sure which of those two it is. She was so unwell at the end of the trial that she couldn't be present for the verdict. She will have to be present and listen to the victim impact statements, but that will come later on. You see, the real tragedy here is not only did she kill her younger son, she made her older son her accomplice and ruined his life as well. He's going to prison. She effectively killed both of her boys and herself. The worst part of this is if her mental derangement was not diagnosed pre-trial, she might very well have a claim for ineffective assistance of counsel and might get a chance at a new trial. In my opinion, she should never see the light of day as a free person again. But her case also raises numerous other issues. When she lived in Oklahoma, her son was taken away from her and lived with his father. After his father had a stroke, she moved back to Michigan and got the boy back, and Oklahoma didn't follow up with Michigan to ensure that child was safe. Nobody followed up. The only person who knew how bad this boy was his brother, and he was so under the control of this woman, his mother, that he couldn't or didn't think for himself. Now, she was working as a law clerk for a judge. It's really unbelievable that no one knew what she was doing. Lots of people are to blame for Timothy's death besides her and the system, but they will never be tried because you can't try a system. In this case, we have to hope that punishing the two most culpable people will bring some measure of justice, but only time will tell if it actually does. So that's what I have for you today. Hopefully you found this interesting. If you would, I'd love to have you like and share and subscribe if you haven't already. And leave me a comment down below. And if you want, you can email me with a comment. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day. If you like this video, here are a few others you might try, and don't forget to subscribe. Have a terrific day, guys.